something that comes to mind when I think about being lucky is that you're not lucky unless you're also prepared, especially in creative endeavors. Mm-hmm. So if you are somebody who considers yourself lucky, but then when an opportunity presents itself, you're not ready to take it on, then I don't really think that's not the same thing. It's like being prepared for when luck comes along.
Yes. No, for real, same. I'm just waiting. I wanted fall weather. Just so we're at this, I'll keep going with that conversation, but I just wanted to,
But I think it's literally perfect.
Yeah, size too. All right, joining us today is Chelsea Bennett, aka Seyblu.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming here.
Thank you.
I wanted to know more of just what inspired that name for you. Seyblu.
Yeah, Seyblu is a combination of my first name and what was my artist name.
Yeah.
My artist songwriting handle, Blue. So Chelsea, which ends with SEY for me, and Blue, which was my songwriting handle. So I decided to put them together. I had, as Chelsea Bennett, I had released a bunch of music, and that was fine. Like, it served the purpose that I, had at the time.
Yes.
And then I felt like I kind of grew out of it, and I wanted more from like myself. I wanted to deliver more of like whoever I was as an artist, and so I decided to change. And it was a big change because I had released music as Chelsea Bennett,
Yes.
and deciding to change your name is kind of scary because you're like, well, now it means that nobody knows who I am. And
kind of reinventing yourself.
Yeah. But it also is a kind of an opportunity for me to like just establish a new version of myself, like as the artist I wanted to be, and have a bit of a fresh start. And the Blue part of that was really important because Chelsea was very high energy, very extroverted, very charismatic.
Okay.
And Blue was like kind of the opposite, very low energy, very pensive and introspective,
So you needed a balance.
So I needed a balance, yeah.
Well, take me back to when you first realized like music was your love.
Well, I was really young when music became a part of my life because I come from a family of classical musicians, actually. So in my family, like my aunt's an opera singer, and my uncle's a pianist, and my other uncle's a composer and a conductor. So, and a lot of my cousins actually studied classical music in university.
Okay, so this is a family.
So it's a family thing. And man, I forgot what a tattoo feels like.
You did okay?
Yeah.
It's okay.
So basically, my family, everyone studied piano as a kid. You had to start studying piano when you were like 5 or whenever you could basically sit up and sit on the piano bench.
So it was kind of like not a choice, like you were put in that position to just learn?
Pretty much. My parents are, as you'll probably learn, pretty alternative folks. So my dad is the classical side of my family that grew up pretty strict in that regard. And I think my dad didn't want to be as strict, but he did certainly want us to learn. So it wasn't like you absolutely have to, but we were all pretty into it anyway, like me and my siblings.
Beautiful fam jam. You guys are just all jamming.
Yeah, we did for many years, actually.
Yes.
And still at like Christmas time when we all get together, we still jam, which is nice.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But yeah, just basically when after I started learning piano as a kid, I joined my church choir, and my Aunt Donna, who is an amazing opera singer, she she was the choir director, and I learned from her for many years. And I think I knew I wanted to be a singer really, really early, maybe like 12, 13 years old. But I did a lot of different things. I did dance, and I actually did a bit of modeling when I was around 12. So then it kind of dawned on me in my like early teens. And then I switched to jazz.
Where did the jazz specifically come from, that influence?
Yeah, it's a kind of a funny story for me. I love my Aunt Donna, and if she ever sees this, I would be interested to know kind of what her story would be. But when I was studying privately with her, I was doing like opera and sort of, like more cabaret style opera. And I went to her, like my dad, her brother, and just said like, I don't really want to study opera anymore. I don't vibe with it. And my dad was like, okay, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't know, but like, I know that I really like, like soul music essentially. And so he didn't really have anyone in his network to contact. So the first person that he could get a hold of was this jazz piano player in Peterborough. Like I was from a small town in like 45 minutes east of Peterborough. So when I was 15, I just went and studied with this piano player in Peterborough. And mostly we just like learned jazz songs. And shout out Rob Phillips. He was my piano player for many years, and he taught me all the jazz, like every jazz standard in the book. And we performed together for many years. And yeah, that's how it really started, I would say.
So just nothing you could ever predict. It just kind of later just fell on your lap.
Yeah, and my dad just he was like, well, I don't know who to call, so I'll call this one guy who I think might know another guy who may have a connection to this other guy. Yeah. And then, I don't know, this guy Rob came into my life and totally just switched the way I perceived music.
Was it growing up like in a smaller town outside of Peterborough, especially trying to pursue music? Did that have any boundaries or?
Yeah, well, my town was at the time like 3,500 people.
Wow.
And, I was so fortunate to have classical musicians in my life that at least were an example of how you could be a full-time musician, at the very least, But I certainly didn't have any, examples of somebody doing pop music or something that wasn't like highly trained and, highly structured. I feel very, very lucky to have been able to go to Peterborough and just study jazz because
I was not expecting that actually. That would be just outside of there, but I guess when you find someone that you connect with.
Yeah, so this guy in Peterborough just kind of took me under his wing and was like, okay, if you like that, you might like this. If you like that, you might like this, and just kept introducing me to things.
You unearthed all these amazing, I guess, inspirations for you, right?
Yeah.
And how did you end up in Toronto? What was the move?
So when I was graduating high school, I was performing jazz all the time and just was obsessed. And it kind of made sense to try to go to music school. So I auditioned for I think I got in. I think I auditioned for 3 different schools, and I ended up going to Humber, Humber College in Toronto, and then did the first year in the vocal jazz program, and actually decided not to go back after that. So
why not?
So I think I just had so much experience in the music industry already that I had a version of what I envisioned training would be like. And that wasn't it, you know?
The standards.
Yeah, and also I think the thing that I struggle with about music being in school is that inevitably it has to become this like highly structured and kind of like prescriptive thing that I just didn't know it to be before that. Like I was kind of writing my own music as a teenager, but never really took it seriously. And when I went to college, I expected to be able to take it seriously, and that just wasn't encouraged, really. Like I was really lucky that in my first year, I had this one teacher, Shannon Gunn, who a lot of people in this city will know. And I asked her if I could write the music for my final performance, and nobody I had talked to or nobody in the whole program that I knew of was doing that.
What?
And
Wouldn't
she,
that be the obvious?
yeah,
Original stuff? Okay.
yeah, and she was like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
She's like, you're gonna have to write out the parts for every instrument. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
But I figured it out, you know, and I'm so grateful that I had her. But her and like a couple of other teachers were definitely exceptions. Because generally I just found I didn't really want to be in a lot of the classes, and I didn't really want to learn some of the stuff that some of the teachers were teaching me. And yeah, I didn't really like the way that the teaching was being like executed, you know. And I think that's all part of it, is like music is so subjective and so personal. So it's pretty difficult to put that into a school environment, because no matter what, you're going to have people that don't resonate with you or you don't want to listen to. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the vessel that is telling you information matters a lot.
Yes. I felt the same exact way going to like art school. It
Yeah.
sucked the passion out of art. And
Yeah.
what do you think is the problem with that? It's not the right environment to foster creativity?
I mean, again, it's like putting an art form into a school environment just gives it so much sort of generic structure. And ultimately, when you study one-on-one, like I've been super fortunate. When I was 16, I met this vocal coach that just really changed my life in Toronto. So when I was 16, my dad drove me to Toronto and said like, okay, we're going to spend the money on this vocal coach, so you better, this better be worth it. It was a lot of money, and my parents were like really nervous about it. But it's interesting. For a while, music was my happy place. Like for a lot of songwriters, they would say, I can't like write until I'm like sad. And it was almost the opposite for me. Like when I was upset or going through something or grieving, it was more like I just needed sort of calmness and a space, and I couldn't write in those moments. So I think that's why a lot of the music that I've put out so far has been like the love story and the story of my journey, and through songwriting and like my version of, you know, why I want to write music. But over time, it's become a little bit more of like sharing my truth, which can be difficult. I'm excited also that I've written some music where I was like really mad. You know, I wrote out of anger, and I wrote out of depression, and I wrote out of anxiety, and I wrote a couple of songs that are just about like feeling like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I'm good enough. I don't know if I have what it takes. And writing out of that sort of desperation. So yeah, now it's more just about honesty.
Honesty, which is your last song that you made.
Yeah, Honest. That was a big one for me. Yeah, I was really excited to put that one out, because it was definitely like marking my territory as like somebody who can just write the way I feel, not just, I guess, like at the, you know, in the past about happy things.
Because when you made that music video, it was so cool, that perspective of the half and the glass.
Thank you.
Was that just showcasing glass half full? Like, what was the inspiration of?
Yeah, well, a lot of it had to do with reflection and being able to look at oneself, like being able to like I see reflection as being able to like look through water, and it's this kind of movement of things, and the way that we look at ourselves is always changing, the way that others look at us is always changing, and we forget that like nothing stays the same, like nothing, right?
It's constant, isn't it?
Everything is constantly changing, and everything that we think is solid is like just a bunch of tiny things in movement. So there's this element of like allowing ourselves to be able to look at ourselves through something like water, because water is constantly moving, and you can tell, you can see it. It's this natural flow. Like music to me has always just been this constant in my life, but creating the visuals hasn't. You know, as a jazz singer, like, no shade to like jazz singers everywhere, but the industry doesn't, we don't like, they don't really do that, you know, like there's not a lot of effort put into music videos often. Things are changing now, but especially when I was coming up in jazz, like it was, you just like put on a nice outfit, you stand in front of the mic, maybe you do a live off the floor thing, but like there's not the same culture of like creating these visuals that are supposed to evoke the feeling of the song. So yeah, when I started writing my own music, I started to realize that that matters to me. And I'm still on that journey of like discovering and kind of unveiling what my visual identity looks and feels like, because yeah, I'm still going through that, I think.
Till this day though, do you have other mentors that are, I guess, taking you to the next level in your music now?
I see Mika, the guy that I met when I was 16. I see him a couple times a year. Okay. But he just lives in Queen West, actually, like up the street. Oh. And I live in Parkdale, so we live really close to each other. And I'm seeing him tomorrow, actually.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. And I'm 33 now, just full disclosure. So I've been seeing him for like a really long time, like over 15 years. So yeah, so I still see him. He still helps me strategize and just be really intentional about what I want out of this, you know, this whole music life. In addition to him, I actually did a residency in Portugal last year.
Oh, incredible! Okay.
Yeah, in Lisbon, and I had a mentor there who, long story short, he has also been in my life a lot recently. I hired him for like the last 6 months to help with releases and stuff. Wow, so yeah, and he helps me like just generally speaking with different things. So yeah, him as well. And I don't know if there's anybody else. I mean, everyone that I've worked with on releases and stuff has been mostly like hired.
But tell me more about Portugal. Like, is this something that drew you to there, or is it that person in particular?
Yeah, no. So when I was in my early 20s, I took this big trip to Europe for a couple years and just bopped around and worked. And I'm half Dutch. I have, my mom's side is my Dutch side of my family. Cool. So I went to the Netherlands for a year and did like a working holiday thing. And then I spent a lot of time in Portugal at that time. And I just loved it. That's where I got my first tattoo, actually. That's okay. Yeah.
What was the or I guess the highlight of that trip, and what you've learned, like the biggest lesson?
Yeah, you know, it sounds so cheesy, but the lesson that I learned was that everywhere you go, there you are. You know, that old phrase. And it's so true. You cannot escape yourself. Like, as hard as you try.
I learned that the hard way. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. And it can be really scary and really rewarding. I think in my experience, just being kind of left to my own devices really forced me to discover for myself like what I actually want to do with my time and the people I actually want to be around. Because when you're traveling, it's pretty easy to spend you know, different amounts of time with a bunch of random people, and you have the choice to either hang with people or just leave. And a lot of times when you start to build relationships with people in one single place, you sometimes start to feel like, okay, well, this is my friend and I want to spend more time with them, so like I should stay at this party or I should stay at this gathering. But when I was traveling, I started to realize like I don't need to be anywhere for anybody but myself.
Yes.
It's more important to me that I'm actually listening to what my body is saying and my mind is saying and my spirit, and just follow that intuition, because if I don't, I end up feeling guilt and like unhappy with my choices.
Did you feel like you were a people pleaser at that time before you started to travel?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
But what were you searching for? Like when you went, was there a sense of you were trying to run away from something, or did something happen during that time that made you leave?
Yeah, I mean, so my timeline was kind of that I went to college for the year. I dropped out. I lived downtown Toronto for a couple years, and then I went to Europe for a couple years. So it was definitely my opportunity to try everything else other than music. I think I held my identity as a musician so close to my heart for so long. I didn't know what else I had. It was like I didn't know who I was outside of that. And it started to feel like a cage, you know. So when I moved downtown Toronto, I was still kind of doing gigs and still kind of singing jazz, but I wasn't really into it. Like, it wasn't really working for me. So I was like, okay, well, what if I just traveled, and what if I lived in the Netherlands for a year and just like tried to connect with that side of my family and that part of my heritage, and was just around people who don't know who I am at all, so that I could be whoever I wanted to be. And I thought it would be like reinventing myself, but it wasn't at all. It was like,
What do you mean?
it was like more so actually learning about myself. It was learning who I really am. And that's totally what it did. It was really hard at times. I was extremely broke. I had no money. And I was just like taking trains and the cheapest flights I could possibly find, and working wherever I possibly could to like make a bit of money to keep traveling. And I was extremely lonely. I had these spurts of time where it would just be like weeks on end where I just didn't see anybody I knew. And I think that it really taught me about being in solitude and enjoying my own presence, and having the choice to be around people when I want to make that choice, and not being around people when I don't want to be. So many good life lessons in that, you know.
Did you find it hard to make friends? What was the, I guess, what held you back from going to just reach out to others who are also in the same position as you? Yeah,
well, I'm such an extrovert. I don't know if that's obvious. So making friends wasn't necessarily difficult, but it was making like healthy friends and good friends, because I didn't really have trouble meeting people, or just, you know, meeting people quickly to do stuff. But I found myself in the company of people I didn't want to be with a lot of times. So I started to learn the importance of making good friends and people who are genuinely interested in you, and you're genuinely interested in them. Not just this kind of surface level, like, let's just go have fun kind of people, you know?
So you were more focused on the quality as opposed to the quantity of people. What inspires your personal songwriting?
Right. Okay, yeah. I guess, for me, it's funny. I guess, like, for the music that I've released so far, it's been a lot of just feeling love in my life, and the ways that love has shown up in my life. I think that's been a lot of the driving force behind the music that I've put out so far. And then just the last couple of songs have been more an experiment for me to dive into what makes me me, and like why it's so important to me that there's like a level of authenticity in the work that I'm putting out, and just the journey that I've had through, you know, why I didn't take my own songwriting seriously when I was a teenager. Like, I was writing songs all the time. Like, when I was supposed to be practicing, you know, I would sit at the piano and just write stuff down. And I never showed anybody that stuff. Like, I may have played a couple of things for my parents when I was like 16. If you have a creative instinct, you should go for it. Like, why we don't, you know, the reasons that we don't are usually based in fear and guilt and shame. But that's just holding us back, you know.
How do you keep yourself grounded to make sure that you're moving in authenticity? What are your your ways of moving through that?
I think it comes down to a couple of things. One of them is definitely meditation. My European trip, again, I think taught me a lot about just like being alone, and meditation is a really good way of just inserting that into your life. And if you can be comfortable in your own silence, then I think it's a lot easier to ground yourself. And then the people you surround yourself with. When I met my partner, one of the things that I noticed is that, first of all, he makes me feel really calm, and which is grounding already. But he also just makes me feel like I can just be completely myself. And if you're able to listen to your instinct around that kind of thing, then you'll start to notice that there are people that when you're around them, you can't be yourself. And that will start to bug you.
Oh, yes.
So listen to that. It's been a process of learning that for myself, is that just stop just brushing it off, that it's okay that you've been around people that don't make you feel like you can be yourself, and that's not okay.
So during that trip to Europe is when you were aware of these things, or were there people that you just kept tolerating that finally disappointed you?
For sure. Yeah. I tolerated so much crap. And a lot of men, like a lot of little mini fling relationship things with men that it was just so there was no accountability, and there was, not even necessarily a real respect for each other. It was just to have fun. And I think to a degree, you kind of need a bit of that when you're early in life, just allowing yourself to make mistakes and have fun and experience life. But you should also learn.
Yes, absolutely.
It's you make sure that you're listening to your instincts about that, because you will learn something from it. Especially when I was in college, and then just out of college, it was just a very I just felt like a mess. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I wanted to be. And just allowing people to kind of take advantage of my, my friendliness and whatever. Certainly taught me a lot. I got burned a lot. Oh, boy. And I think I burned people a lot too, I think I was broken at the time and couldn't really envision that I couldn't understand or see how I was hurting people, but I definitely was,
That's amazing that you're taking accountability for that though, and then doing different for your partner now, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think when you do get into a serious relationship, if you both have the understanding that you want to make it work, and you do respect each other, and you do love each other, that you can actually learn that through them too.
Yes.
So, just being able to accept I hurt this person, but I'm realizing now that I did that, and then that other person being willing to work through that with you is seriously powerful stuff.
Oh, for sure. Because you can learn so much on your own, but someone else mirroring what you're doing is just another level. Do you feel more authentic now?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Now, how do I be the most authentic version of myself that that I think speaks closest to who I am? And in music too, what's amazing about this industry is that you can just be whoever you want to be. That's a sense of freedom that a lot of people in a lot of jobs everywhere don't have. So take advantage of that, we should be celebrating that. When you work in the arts, if you're lucky enough to have a job that is creative, then your instincts and your gut feeling about things is incredibly important. So if you have a gut feeling about something, really try to listen to that, because people have a lot of advice for you. And people are going to say well, if you want to take this path, you got to do A, B, and C. And if you want to try that, you better talk to these kind of people. And you're going to want a label deal, and you're going to want this, and you're going to want to get that. And it's it doesn't matter. It's important that there are people who can help you and guide you and give you advice. But definitely these people need to have your best interests at heart, and you need to know that they're like, you need to be able to listen to your instinct about who to listen to and who not to listen to, because it is so difficult to determine what actually matters to you personally. And the only way you're going to do that is to listen to your instincts. So
a lot of outside influences or just people trying to control your journey.
Oh, goodness. Yeah. And these are people who probably mean well, you know, they're like, well, make sure that you put out a single every 6 weeks, because like that's how to stay relevant. It's like, those people mean well. They want to see you succeed, but they don't always know. And if that doesn't feel right to you, you know, just take it in, like maybe say thank you for offering this insight, but you really need to like sit with that yourself and determine like what steps are right for you. And that's really hard. That's really hard. But I think in the beginning, people would say like, well, make sure you learn all these songs and make sure you perform this way and make sure you always look nice like this. And I just took it. You know, I rode that wave for a while. Was like, oh, well, that's what they say to do here, and this is how they say to do that. So I'll just try. And like, I did, and that's fine. And now I'm like, now I know what I really want, so I don't have to ride that wave anymore.
A lot of, I guess, the people who will be watching certain things like this are younger artists, and I wanted to know more on your side of how can they utilize social media, and like what are the best, especially now things are constantly changing, especially every year the algorithm's changing. There's more people getting involved.
I think, like, to be honest, my, like, even as a millennial, my interpretation of like how a musician can interact with digital forums is like already old.
It's already behind.
It's already behind, you know. I feel like the kids these days are creating such innovative ways of interacting online that it's just, it's like impressing me.
What are one of those things that was kind of super impressive?
Oh, goodness. I guess, you know, when you go on TikTok, you see like, I don't know, the kids they're reacting to stuff. Like, I don't know, they'll do reaction videos. And, you know, I never thought that I would actually watch a series where, I don't know, somebody's throwing glass jars full of like tomato sauce down the marble staircase. Guys, I'm obsessed. Like, why am I watching that? I can't even answer you. I don't know. But there's, like I can't think of good examples of people in the music industry right now, but it's amazing. I just feel like they have a different, like, we didn't grow up, at least I didn't grow up with a phone. And, you know, I didn't really have one until I was like, whatever, teenager, teenage age. And I can just imagine that when you actually grow up with this thing, that it just seems like the baseline for inventions. Like a phone to us was like this amazing thing, but to a kid who's like 18 today, that's like the most basic whatever. Like everyone has a phone. It's like this thing that's simple. So starting from that place, it will just like, it creates all of these other opportunities in your mind, I think, for an innovation. I feel like you can kind of create your own story in this regard. Like a lot of people will interact with social media platforms in like a really simple way, and it can be extremely effective. Others, you know, dive in really hard and they're on there every day talking to your face. But yeah, both can be effective.
But you're right about that though, like how creative these kids have been, and that's why it's just so hard to know what the landscape is now. Like, how do we get that generation's attention, or like, you know what I mean?
Lord. I mean, I think that what you're doing is super cool, and even just the novelty of this in itself. Like, there are certain rules that I think just like in general marketing, you know, will not 100% succeed, but will have a better likeliness of succeeding. Like the novelty of this, like tattoo in an interview is so cool. But like anything that's kind of novel, you know, just like generally in history will catch people's attention.
So new niches,
you know,
and just trying to change things up. So tell me about the horseshoe. Why did you choose this today?
So when I was a kid, I used to do horseback riding, and I started out actually with my cousin. We started riding Western. I don't think I mentioned this before, but I actually grew up on a farm. Oh. So we had a bunch of. Okay, before I get into the horseshoe, I think we should just get this out of the way. Yes. My parents decided for some reason that they wanted to raise ostriches. So when I was born, they started an ostrich farm, but we had emus and rheas, which are like basically smaller versions. Yeah. And we had donkeys and chickens, dogs and cats, and like just a bunch of different things. But so I did like donkey riding when I was a kid, but when I was, I think about 14 or 15, my cousin and I started taking Western horseback riding lessons, which for anybody who doesn't know is basically like a different style of riding that has like a different saddle and different type of horseshoe. And then when I decided I was like really into horseback riding, and I told my parents, like, I think I could do more of this. I got my own horse, and my horse was actually English. So I had to switch riding styles to English, which is again like a different saddle and different horseshoe style. So yeah, so that's kind of the history of my horseback riding experience. But then something that I think has come up in my life as a theme is just this feeling of being lucky. When I was traveling Europe, also I had a couple of pretty serious close calls with like my health. Just like being in dangerous situations. A couple of times where I almost got mugged, and like a couple of times where people almost like kicked the crap out of me. Like just like certain close calls of like my safety. Wow. And I thought I was just like really lucky, and things like that have happened in my life, just feeling really lucky. And also just this experience of being lucky in the creative endeavors that I've taken on, but also something that comes to mind when I think about being lucky is that you're not lucky unless you're also prepared, especially in creative endeavors. So if you are somebody who considers yourself lucky, but then when an opportunity presents itself, you're not ready to take it on, then I don't really think that's not the same thing. It's like being prepared for when luck comes along.
Yes. So you have to be able to receive that blessing or opportunity, as you say, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's a level of like timing in that as well. Like certain things happen at certain times in your life that will teach you certain lessons. But I also think that I've just been extremely lucky and extremely fortunate in my life. So this symbol, that's my combination of those two things. It's like a horseshoe represents being lucky and having good fortune. And it's also a really beautiful way of remembering my horse, Kirby, rest in peace. He had to be put down when I was 16. And the other horses that I rode.
So beneath the image that you project to the world, what is a one essential truth that you wish people knew about you?
Oh, wow. I have like a couple of different things that come to mind. One is that I feel very much like I'm a people person. I'm naturally very extroverted, and I love being around people. I really want to get to know people better. But sometimes I feel like I don't know how. So I guess what I would hope that people know about me is just that I'm super interested in the human experience, and I really want to know why people do the things they do. Like I'm fascinated by everybody's personal experience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love it.